Deanna and CJ in. And Deanna and CJ, you both have books, right? I've given you books. You didn't get a book last night? I could have sworn I got you a book. Get your book. Cash. All right. So yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about the removing portion because I always said don't remove. Hey, Shanice is here. Shanice, I got you a book, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Just making sure. Okay. All right. So what Richard was asking was, when you're going through the process of your skin weights, right? So like if I select this influence, if I want actually, if I have like the top of the head is still being affected by this jaw joint, I don't want that. I have painted that 100% control to the back of the head, but it hasn't, for some reason, removed it completely from the jaw joint, right? And what I have said previously was, you want to add your influence to where you want it, not take it away. Well, technically, that's true and not quite true. I have added 100% to the back of the back of the head joint, but it's still being affected by this jaw joint, and I don't want it to be, right? So how do I remove that? Well, if I do my add command on my paint skin weights tool, right? Right now, I have a value of 0.2, which is going to add it. But my minimum and maximum value are between 0 and 1. The maximum I can paint is 1. The minimum I can paint is 0, which is going to do nothing. If I set my minimum to -1 and then set my value to -0.2, I can actually remove the weighting.
In a layman's term, just change the value and
change the positive to negative. Yeah.
So the minimum and the value.
Yes. Yeah. Set the minimum so that you can go below 0, and then set your value to a negative number. And that will remove the weighting so that it's no longer being affected. So yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of smooth that out a little bit. And I'm just going to check the end of the head. There's that. I'm going to check the base jaw joint. That's affecting the back of the head. Let me just make sure that these in the back of the head are being, I'm going to set that back to +2 and add that in like this. Because this is all skull, and the skull, when you're old enough, is a single piece. That's the neck 2. The neck 2 shouldn't be, this is a perfect example, right? This shouldn't be affecting the face at all. -0.2.
That is perfect.
But yeah, so the just to kind of restate, you want to make sure that you've added this weight somewhere else before you remove it. Like I checked the back of the head and I had 100% to all that geometry previously, but I was still getting influence from this main neck joint, which is bad, right? So I wanted to remove that, right? So now if I test this, I have I have almost no influence on the head geometry itself. I still have a little bit in the back, so I'm going to go back here and choose the base jaw joint, and I have already added this elsewhere, so I'm just going to paint this out so that there's no longer influence, because this is the jaw joint. It shouldn't be affecting the back of the head, right? It only should be affecting the facial muscles. I'll just smooth that out a little bit. Again, I'm being really rough because I didn't want to really do a whole lot in the painting today. No. This is, what you said. This was important because really, honestly, like this made it better than it was, right? And this was kind of the final what I needed out of this. So that's don't apologize. It's fine. And let me just finalize this for the jaw. I'll do some more to get the rest of the top of the face out of there. And I'll blend this, smooth it, hold down shift to smooth it into the lower mouth, right? I don't want it to affect the shoulders. That's already been painted elsewhere. And there's the end. And that's pretty well been blended. So that's good. And I'm happy. Good. All right. That looks good. Good. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save as, because this is a good version of my skinning. Now, and again, just to kind of restate this, you can skin as almost the last thing you do if you really wanted to. You could set up the entire skeletal system and controls and everything other than blend shapes, other than facial expressions, prior to skinning, because the controls control the joints and the joints control the skin. So yes, you can go back and fix skinning later if you're not happy with it, right? And here's what I usually say with our biped character, which we're going to get started on in like a week and a half, give or take. Every system, every part of your character, the arms, the hand, the spine, the legs, all of those systems are individual systems that work independently of everything else. You don't have to have the spine working in order for the arm to work, right? So I'll say this again later on. When we go through our biped character, we break it up into those separate systems. And so if there's something that doesn't work on your legs, move on and do the next assignment, because there's a good 2-week period, if not more, at the end of the class. And by I mean the semester or quarter, right? At the end of the quarter, there's a good 2-week period where you go back and you fix all the problems, right? So you can get 100 on your arms even though your spine is broken as hell, right? Okay, so and then you come back in the finalization assignment and fix your spine, right? So I always say that, and I always get people not moving on because they are focused on fixing what's broken and not doing what's next, right? Okay, so I'll say that again later, but I just wanted to reiterate that because we kind of touched on, like, yes, you can fix things later. So anyway, all right, getting to the controls. Yay! All right, so I'm going to create a NURBS circle because we do a lot of those. And I'm going to place a few of these. The first thing we want to do is place all of our controls. Okay, similar to what we've done in the past. We place our controls and then we connect them up. So this is going to be my main control, right? And I'm just going to Control D to duplicate it. And I'm going to move it up. I'm going to create some simple positioning here. Let me go ahead and create my geo layer so that I can work easily with this. And reference that. And I'm going to scale this in. I'm just going to create a few spine controls. In this case, yeah, I think I'll just do 2 spine controls. I'll create a neck control, which is basically the head control. I'm just aligning this with that joint, that base joint in the neck. And when you're creating your controls, you want to have them, fairly tight around the body. You don't want them to be cumbersome when the character is posed, right? I don't want this to be this big.
With each of the joints on the...
In this case, yeah, I'm kind of lining it up with these individual joints. If you want to hide your geometry and hold down V to snap it to the joint, that would be fine. I'm basically lining it up. I just wasn't being so precise about it. What's that?
I'm just...
Okay. All right, so I have this for the neck / head, right? I'm going to duplicate this again, and I'm going to create a jaw control. Now, we haven't really gotten into the like really manipulating curves to create controls, right? We did a little bit with the shark, with the fish, right? But what I'm going to do on this head control, one of the 10 rules of rigging is make controls that make sense to the animator, right? I don't need an entire circle for a jaw control. So I'm going to cut this curve in half and create a semicircle instead. And then I'm going to shape that up. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my top view. And I'm going to right click on this curve. I'm going to hide my geometry. I'm just going to show polygons and show joints so that I'm not looking at the joints, right? Just because they can get in the way from this top view, right? So I'm going to right click this curve. I'm going to go to curve point. And I'm going to click and drag until I'm basically straight up, right? this is going to select a point on the curve. This is not a CV. This is just a place on the curve, right? And then I'm going to shift click the other side and click and drag down to the bottom so that that's as far to the bottom as possible. So now I have 2 points on the curve selected. These are just places on the curve, right? And now that I have those 2 points selected, this is where I'm going to cut my curve in half. I'm going to go back to my modeling menu set. I'm going to go to curves. I'm going to go to detach. Curves, detach. So this has taken that one circle and turned it into 2. Yes.
Can you only detach with curves?
You can detach faces, you can detach edges, you can detach all kinds of things. But the only thing you can detach under the curves menu, if you go to curves detach, is curves. But there's also, if you go to edit mesh, you can detach components, you can detach faces. They don't call it detach, but you can like duplicate faces or extract, you know, stuff like that. So now I have 2 curves. Now here's the thing. Every NURBS object, every NURBS-based object, and NURBS, just for the sake of knowledge, NURB, and S is sometimes lowercase, sometimes capitalized. I always write it lowercase. Stands for, I think you guys can see all this. I'll just make it larger. Stands for non-uniform rational B splines. Sometimes you'll see it with the B actually spelled out as Bezier splines, right? These are Bezier curves. Not all of them have Bezier handles, but they're non-uniform rational B splines. In case you wondered, that's a little bit of trivia for you. It might be on a quiz. I don't know. We have one quiz. So that's what NURBS stands for. And every NURBS object is mathematically created. Okay, so like I said before, if I right click on this and show control vertices, these are your control points. If I show hulls, you'll see that the control points are connected by these lines, and their position in 3-dimensional space is averaged together to create this curve, right? This is how you get nice organic shapes, is through these mathematical curves, right? And so that being said, every NURBS surface has a starting point and an ending point, right? Even a NURBS sphere, if I create NURBS sphere, move that up and out, you can see the thick line right there is the ending point of this NURBS surface, right? That thick line is the mathematical end. It starts here on the left, wraps around this way, and matches up to itself, right? And so this is a mathematically created curved sphere, right? As perfect as possible for the level of detail that it has, right? And so that being said, again, this every NURBS circle also has a beginning and ending point, and you can see that on the UVs, or not on the UVs, on the CVs, the control vertices, right? This little U and this little square denotes that this right here is the ending point, right? It begins here and ends here at this little U. We cut our curve where that U used to be, right? Okay, that and so since that had an ending point, you'll see that it's possible that we might have left a gap, right? It's possible that when you cut this, that you might not have cut it perfectly. Mine actually, assumed my endpoint, and I could end up with 3 curves here, right? One for the back, one for the front, and one for the little tiny segment between the back and front, right? So you may have a tiny curve here if you don't cut it perfectly at the top and bottom. It doesn't take far off for it to actually do that. So just watch out for that. Make sure that the curves that you're left with are a back curve, a front curve, and not some little tiny intermediary curve. You should only have 2 curves out of this cut, right? It only happens at that start and end point. It usually never happens on the other side, right? Okay. So I just wanted to state that for the sake of, why do I have this tiny little piece floating out here, right? Okay. Now, I don't need this back curve at all. So I'm going to delete it. And I'm left with an almost jaw shape in the front of the face. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and go to Control Vertex. I'm going to select this ending CV and shift select the other end, or I could do it with symmetry turned on, however you want to do it, as long as I have both sides selected. I'm going to tap my B button to activate soft select, and then I'm going to hold it down and left click and drag to grow my selection a little bit. And I'm just going to scale that in. I'm going to pull it, I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'm going to select these second vertices and tap B again to turn that off, turn soft selection off. And I'm just going to create a little jaw shape. I might scale that in as well. I'll go ahead and do these, scale those in a little bit, right? I'm just kind of tightening this shape around my head to create a jaw control. And then I'm going to take all of these and rotate them down to make them align with the joints a little bit. I can even move it down a little bit, right? So this doesn't have to be ridiculously perfect, but my point is, this looks like a jaw control. It makes sense, right? If I were to look at that and be like, gosh, I wonder what that controls, my first guess would be the jaw, right? Okay. Now, right now, this rotates from the center of the old circle. I want this to rotate from my base jaw joint. And again, I saw this before. I've corrected a couple of people, so I'm just going to say it now, especially for those that I don't see in person. If you don't have 3 jaw joints in the shape of a jaw, you're doing it wrong, okay? You need to go back and fix that. You should have the base. You should have the lower back, right, below the ear, and the end. 1, 2, 3, and a little L. We'll call it a relaxed L. It's a psychiatrist's couch, right? I mean, like, I'd lay back on this and be comfortable, right? Okay, that's the shape. Now, So what I'm going to do with my pivot, I'm going to hide my geometry. See how handy that layer is? I'm going to hide my geometry. I'm going to hold down D and V and until this becomes a little circle. And I'm just going to grab it from the center and snap it to the back, that base jaw joint, right? Right there. So my control and my jaw rotate from the same place. That make sense? So that's what I'm going to do with that control. Now, I'm going to name it. I'll go ahead and name it. This is my jaw underscore CTRL. And I'll go ahead and freeze transformations. Modify freeze transformations. And we'll come back and name these other ones as well. But I want to finish creating my controls. Now, similar to the alien eye, I'm going to have a nerved circle. And again, I'm selecting the neck and I'm just hitting Control D to duplicate it. And I'm just going to move it up in front of the face and rotate it 90 degrees. And move it away from the face, right? If I want to make sure that this is nice and centered, I can come in here to the character's front view and get that centered between the eyes. But your alien eye character only had one eye. This guy has 7. No, he has 2. Right? Kind of looks like a really bad Kermit the Frog. So I have my main eye control here, but I'm going to have an individual control for each of the eyes individually as well. So I'm going to Control D to duplicate this. I'm going to scale it down to a good size. And then I'm just going to align this with the center of the eye. If I want to be really anal about it, which I usually do, I'm going to hold down V and move it according to, like, on the x-axis to align that, and then on the y-axis to align it to the center of the pupil like that, right? That's just how I roll. And then I'm going to Control D to duplicate that one and move that one to this side, holding down V, snap that. So now I have 2 individual eye controls, but this one is way too big. I'm going to scale this down like that, and then I'm going to scale it down like this. So this is going to be my main eye control. It's going to move both of these together, right? But I also want to be able to move each one individually should he get hit on the head and his eyes go crazy or something like that, right? Okay, so I have my eye controls created. The last thing I want to do is create my hand controls. So I'm going to take my neck. And again, you don't have to duplicate. You can create a new NURBS curve every single time. This is just really quick and easy. I'm going to hide my geometry, duplicate my neck, hold down V, snap it to the wrist, rotate it 90 degrees. Take that, duplicate it, hold down V, snap it to the other wrist. It's already rotated 90 degrees. It's perfectly fine. And then I'm going to scale these down to fit nice and snug around the wrist. Again, you don't want to go too close, right? You want to have it so that they can easily just quickly drag a selection over the control and nicely select the controls without having to deal with, trying to dig it out of folded geometry or something like that, right? So this is our joint and control layout. This is what we're going to be creating for this. I'm going to go ahead and hide my joints and just select my controls. You don't have to hide your joints. I'm just doing it. And I'll go ahead and freeze transformations and delete my history. Most of these controls are duplicated from another control, so those technically don't have history, but I've also created a jaw from cutting a curve, and I have created an actual control. So you want to make sure you have your history deleted. You want to make sure, absolutely 100% at this point, you have to have your transformations frozen. This is your default location for your character and his T-pose, right? So the animator should be able to come back to this pose by selecting all the controls and zeroing out their translate and rotate, right? So if they do that, they type a 0 and hit enter, he should come back to this position. Just to kind of illustrate that, I'll move some things around. Right, there's all that. I select all my controls, highlight, rotate XYZ, and translate XYZ. I hit 0. I hit enter. Boom. Back to the default pose. Right. So, since I have finished the location of my joint of my controls, I'm going to save as and save as version 8. And I'll go ahead and name all these. My bottom control is my main control. Okay, it's not always going to be called main, but in this case, I'll call it main. Main underscore CTRL. This is either spine 1 or lower spine. I'm going to call it lower spine underscore CTRL. And upper spine underscore CTRL. This is going to be my neck or head control. I'll call it the head control. Head underscore CTRL. I've already named my jaw. This is my eye main. UIE underscore main underscore CTRL. Or you can just do I main without an underscore. Either one. But then we have left and right, okay? This one you want underscore L underscore CTRL. And I underscore R underscore CTRL. And again, these right and left controls are from his point of view, not mine, right? So this is his right eye. This is his left eye. And then this one can be hand or arm. I'll call it arm, L, CTRL. Technically, let's call it arm because we don't really have a hand control here. And then this one is arm underscore R underscore CTRL. So here's all my controls. Now we're ready to set up the actual control system. I'll just go ahead and Control S to save. Now, did you guys get, I feel like I didn't actually hand out the Puppet Rig assignment sheet. It's on the stream. Did I give that out to you guys?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Pretty sure I talked about it. But, there you go. All right. So this feels like a lot. But all we've really done is create a bunch of circles and put them in place and freeze transformations, right? So since we only have like 6 minutes before break, I'm going to wait to start, but I'm just going to say one thing on this, right? As you guys go through this, right, it feels like a lot. It does. But if you break it down into these little individual tasks, right, like placing these controls, you got that done, right? Or I did, you might get it done later. Don't think of the overall, right? People get so overwhelmed by the overall task that they don't start with the small things, right? My kid does that. My kid's like, I don't want to clean my room. It's so much. It's so dirty. Well, it's all clean laundry. It's just sitting there. Fold a shirt, right? That's not a lot to do. And then fold another shirt, before you realize it, you folded the whole thing, right? I don't know. It might be an hour in his case, but it's a series of small tasks, right? So focus on one thing at a time. Because what we're going to do, there's really only, after this point, obviously the skeleton and the skinning, that was all new, right? After this point, there's only one thing in this setup that you guys haven't done already, and that is setting up the arms. Oh, we do need 2 more controls, but I'll do that when I get to the arms. And that's setting up the arms. The rest of it is all going to be constraints, which you've done. You've done constraints before, right? So your main control, similar to the toothbrush, is going to control the main joint system. The spine is going to use an orient constraint for rotation on that joint. The upper spine is going to do that joint. The neck / head is going to do either the neck or the head joint, right? I'll probably do the head joint. The jaw is going to orient constrain that joint. These controls are going to be set up similar to the eye character, right? This control is simply a parent of those controls. The only thing that's new is this. And that is such a simple step, it only takes a few clicks to complete. So even though we have a lot left to do, it's all stuff you've done before, right? And honestly, if I just did it, it would probably take 10 minutes to complete. The fact that I'm going to talk through it is what's going to take the majority of the time in the second hour, right? But there's not a whole lot left at this point, right? And like I said, if your skinning's not done, but your skeleton is good, you can get the controls done and then go back and fix your skinning, right? The skinning only takes up a couple of points. 2 points for deformations looks good. And 1 point for it moves correctly, no double transformations, which really doesn't have anything to do with skinning. So don't get caught up on the skinning. That's probably the hardest part of this, right? If it is skinned, set up your controls, make sure they work, and then if you have time, go back and fix things, right? This is working smart in this class, right? Don't let the imperfection of what you've done so far keep you from finishing the majority of what's being graded, right? The skinning is 2 points out of 15, right? That's less than 20%, right? Okay, so let's go and go to break, and we'll come back and we'll finish setting up these controls. Might only take a half hour, and then I can just finish with you guys.